everybody, it's Romania Black, and if you can believe it, we are on the second to last Kuroko's basketball light novel. Oh my gosh, volume 5, and these light novels have gotten better and better. It's like the audio dramas all over again. We were talking in the Discord, people were like, we didn't really anticipate there being this much Kuroko's content, and I was like, neither did I, but here we are. And so yeah, I was really enjoying the last volume. Volume 4 was a really good light novel. I had a lot of fun with that one. Volume 3 was pretty good. Volumes 1 and 2 were great, but I really liked volumes 3 and 4. And so going into this volume, I was like, ooh. And there had been some talk in the Discord. Some people have been black boxing some stuff about the novel. And I was like, oh, that probably means there's something interesting going on. What could it be? And so it is scorching hot outside. The temperature today got to 99 without the heat index. I am living in the armpit of the United States, so the humidity was like 90%. It sucked. I got home, my air conditioner wasn't working. It was like 90 degrees in here. My poor doggos were panting. I felt so bad for them, but luckily I managed to fix my air conditioner, and it is now like 80 degrees in here, which does not seem very cool, but compared to what it was 2 hours ago, it is wonderful. So I'll take it. So yeah, it's like 80 degrees here now, which is a lot better. So I'm fine, but my hair is like whatever. And so I finished the light. I just sat down while it was cooling off in here, and I was like, I'm going to read the rest of the light novel. And oh, so we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about the light novel. I'm really excited. Really excited to see what we get. I want to give a very quick shout out over to Patreon for our patrons this week to thank them for all of their support and kindness, especially to Truck. Truck is not one of the philanthropy tier patrons, but they're getting included on this because they have included the translations as well as the novels in their entirety. They're pinned on the Discord if you want to go check them out there and read them yourself, but they went above and beyond to get this stuff organized because I couldn't do it. So thank you so much, Truck, and thank you to our philanthropy tier members over on Patreon who donate a little bit extra each month to get a special shout out. So thank you very much to Edgar, to Dana, to Alex Cornejo, to Kiri, to Be Happy, to Shimoyama, as well as Nameless Monster, Argent, Matthew, Palfinier, as well as Tyrone, Anime Annie, Eric, Sunspots, Legatus Goob, Anna, Translucent Min, and Goob. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. All of my love. Yeah, so starting out this light novel, we're on the 5th light novel. We have one more after this. I was expecting a couple things. I was expecting there to be a chapter or two that could not be translated. There are 2, but this still has more notes than any of my other chapters, so we're gonna go with that. I'm like, the notes just keep getting longer and longer, and I think part of that is because I keep wanting to cite actual pages of the text because the pages are so well written, the translations are so good, that I'm like, yes, we need to talk about this. So going into this, I figured 2 things. One, that there would be some chapters left out because they couldn't have a translation, but the manga somewhere translates them. And 2, we were going to start with the Teiko chapter because that's what we've done all 4 previous novels is we start out with a chapter focusing on Teiko. Things get a little bit interesting this time around, right? So what ends up happening is, 1, we do have 2 chapters that do not have translations. I'm going to start out by reading this here at the top, saying that there were many different translators that were credited for this. There are no translations for chapters 2 and 5, although the Wikipedia page, I did go to the Wikipedia page afterwards when I was done reading the novel and looked up the Wikipedia fan summaries from the manga for those chapters, and we'll kind of go over them. I'm not sad I couldn't find the manga chapters online for them. I'm not sad that I can't read them because one of them just seems like more of what we've read already, and the other one I'm like, okay, but you'll understand that when I explain the chapters. But then we started with chapter 1. Chapter 1, Stopping on the Way, is what the chapter title is called. And right off the bat, I was like, usually in the 11th hour, a series doesn't make changes. You just don't expect that. The last 4 novels have started out with a Teiko flashback moment, and so I went into this fully expecting that. But the very beginning of the chapter starts out totally different than what we've done so far in the series, and I'm like, wait a minute. And so not only is it not about Teiko, it's from first-person point of view. And to be fair, I haven't really talked about this with the other light novels because it's been very consistent. All of the other light novels, with the exception of the little Nago short story that was like at the very beginning, I think it was volumes 1 or 2, Nago number 2 had like a little segment, it was like a little Omeki chapter at the end. Now that was from their first person point of view. All of the other chapters in all of the other light novels have been third-person perspective. From what I can remember, they were all third-person point of view. And I was like, okay. So, but there are several chapters in this volume that are first-person perspective. And I'm like, what? So right off the bat, I had no clue what we were doing. I was like, okay, we're doing first-person point of view. This is not Teiko. So I'm going to read... I copied and pasted several parts from the chapters into this review because they were so well written, and I was just like, okay. So let me start off by saying where the chapter starts up with. I'm going to read verbatim to you all. And because this beginning is very interesting, right? It says, there's a saying that goes something like, meeting a Buddha in hell, meaning that you'll often find help in unexpected places. But I never expected a Buddha to look so beautiful. In this foreign land of Los Angeles, the guy that saved me when I was in a pinch was astonishingly beautiful. Now, right off the bat, I was like, wait a minute, Los Angeles? Well, that would be Himuro and Kagami, right? That seems there. But I'm like, why would Kagami be calling Himuro beautiful? Because, no offense to Kagami, he's handsome, he's very dashing. The word beautiful doesn't come to mind when I think of Kagami. I think of handsome. You could say he's sexy. You could say he's very rugged. But beautiful is definitely more Himuro. He's got the beauty mark. He has the swishy bangs, whatever. And so the night novel describes this black-haired man whose beauty is on par with Kisei. And when the phrase on par with Kisei was mentioned, I was like, well, now wait a minute. That can't be Kagami, because Kagami's never called Kisei beautiful. But also, I was like, wait a minute, why? I was like, why is Kisei getting brought up? Because I debated for a second whether this was going to be a story about Himuro and Kagami from someone else's perspective, like a player from America's perspective, if maybe it was from them and they were talking about Kagami and Himuro, because we've had several Kagami and Himuro-centered stories in this light novel series, so I was kind of like, okay. And the narrator talks about meeting a guy named Mike, which we'll talk about, who doesn't seem bothered by this man whose beauty is on par with Kisei. And I was like, okay. And then there's this fight that breaks out on the court, and it's like, it's all chaotic, and I'm trying to figure out who in the world would know Kisei but would be in America. It didn't make any sense. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Is this the future? Is this after last game? What's happening? And so then we get the story telling us this. You wouldn't have believed it. Someone with a face that looks like he couldn't even kill a bug managed to punch a man almost 2 meters tall. Who would have thought? As if watching a movie, I saw the man fall backwards in slow motion. He was unable to move, lying flat on his back on the basketball court. The impact of the blow seemed to have rendered him unconscious. So the beautiful man is the one that punched the other guy. And this guy who's beautiful, and by the way, the character who is narrating says that Himuro is beautiful like 10 times. Like, you can only describe him as a beautiful man. And I'm like, who is this? I was getting really impatient. And it says he tells him to run with Mike and the others trailing behind them. And somehow they lose Mike in the crowd. Now, at this point, I think the man who is pretty, that's as pretty as Kisei, is Himuro. But, usually the chapter in the beginning of each light novel has something to do with Teiko, so I'm really confused. And we find out the man in question who is beautiful is 15. So I'm like, it sounds like this is the first time they've met. So I'm like, well, it definitely can't be Kagami as a narrator because they met when they were much younger than 15. So it's not him. So I'm like, who is this? And so then the two catch their breath and we find out who each other are in this story. Who it is that we're talking about that is on par with Kisei and the looks. And one of them is in fact Himuro. But the one describing him as beautiful is freaking Nijimura! Nijimura-san! Nijimura! Rainbow wristband! Nijimura is the one that is calling Himuro beautiful. Hold on! Wait! What? I was like, wow! I was just like, wait, what? No! Oh my god! So then, that's not all. The reason why I'm wearing this Rainbow Leia is not only because of the rainbow wristband that Nijimura has, but because Nijimura has the hots for Himuro! It says, and then when Himuro compliments him and calls him Nijimura-san, the story says, I don't know why, but I blushed slightly at the san. It seemed like he hoped to become closer to me in the future. I wouldn't have cared so much in Japan, but it seemed rather inconsistent with the atmosphere here. So I said, oh, well, you can just call me by my first name. Can I call you Tetsuya? Sure, then I'll call you Shu. And so I, Nijimura Shuzo, and Himuro Tetsuya, now finally on equal footing, smiled at each other. What the fudge? Ah! If you had told me going into this story if you told me going into this series, we were talking about ships and ships that I would be rooting for, if you had told me I was going to be rooting for Nijimura Shuzo and Himuro Tatsuya, I would have said, on what grounds? They've never met, but they canonically have now. Ha! And I'm like, I'm sorry. I feel like I'm betraying the ship of Himuro and Murasaki Bara that I have been supporting since day one. But boot them out! I want Nijimura and Himuro together! I'm like, I've never turned so fast on a ship before in my life. I was like, oh, no, boot? You guys are platonic besties. Himuro and Nijimura need to get together. So, oh my god. Anyway, I digress. So basically, after this point, Nijimura follows Himuro, who he just met at the gymnasium where he's meeting up with Alex. And here's something that's so interesting about this entire story. It's that Nijimura, we're getting this story from his perspective and his voice. His voice is so much different than how the manga and anime portray him. Now, at this point, as I'm recording this, I have not read volumes 25 and 26. I haven't read those volumes yet. I'm getting ready to, but I haven't gotten there yet. I'm probably going to read them tomorrow, but I've not read them yet. I just wanted to read this novel first because I was in a reading mood. So I haven't read those manga volumes yet. So I'm not fully done with my Nijimura manga experience. But definitely with the anime, he comes across as this like very stern, mentorly, leaderly, kind of fatherly figure. But soft is not the word I would use to describe him. And in this chapter, Nijimura is just a big old beanbag. He is so soft and he's so like kind of reserved and introverted and like, I don't know what to do. And Himuro like takes charge and is like the bad boy delinquent. And I'm like, when did this happen? But we were talking about this in the comments back with the light novel of Himuro kind of like leading Kagami on to like make the decision to go out on their own. Himuro's kind of a bad boy. He's kind of a secret bad boy. Like, Kagami looks like the bad boy, but he's like a big old cinnamon roll. No, Himuro looks like the pretty boy, but he's got a delinquent side to him. He's got a bad boy streak, right? Which kind of matches up with Nijimura, as we're going to find out. But I was just like, what the heck is going on? So apparently, Nijimura's father still was ill after he turned down being captain at Teiko in middle school. And so this part was really confusing at first because the translation makes it very odd, but I think I figured it out. So right after he stepped down from being captain, his father's condition worsened, and it kept that way for another year. And so while Nijimura was a third year in middle school, and so he figured out he needed to be transported to a facility in the U.S. where they specialized in that treatment, and there just happens to be one in L.A. Why not? So part of his family, his younger brother and younger sister, so there's no mom mentioned, so I don't know if the mom stayed behind with Nijimura or if just the siblings went to go. Nijimura being the eldest of the family kind of makes sense as far as we know. And so apparently, I thought at first Nijimura was waiting till high school to move, but apparently after middle school, after his third year, he moves to America. So it all makes sense now why in the current manga, in the current timeline, we don't see Nijimura because he's over in America already. Which kind of opens up doors being like, well, if Nijimura's already in America, is he going to meet Kagami when he goes over there? Is that going to be a thing? Himuro and him know each other, so I wouldn't be surprised. But I was just like, I was so floored. I couldn't believe it. So the story says that Nijimura is about 15 years old, which to me seems way older than a middle schooler, but I guess with the Japanese school system, it's just about right. Maybe he's a little bit old maybe he was the oldest in his class or something like that. But it's so weird because he is there around the time that Himuro is getting ready to go to Japan to play for Yosen. So it's so bizarre, right? It's so bizarre. The timeline gets a little bit confusing, but it's kind of bittersweet reading this story because you know that Nijimura is potentially staying in America for a while and Himuro is about to go to Japan. Although, I wonder now if Nijimura, if he found out Murasaki Bara was at Yosen, was like, oh, you would totally get along with this guy. He's not a sexual threat. He's only snack sexual. He won't try to steal my man. Oh my God, that's it. That's why Nishimura sent Himuro to work with Yosen. He's like, I can't send him to Aomine. He's too hot. I can't send him to Midorima. He's too mysterious and potentially sexy. I can't send him to Akashi. God, no. I can't send him to Kisei. He's too hot, too. No. Murray Sakibara's not going to make a move because he's too invested in his snacks. I'm sending him to Yosen. That's it. Nishimura was planning this all out, sending him to Yosen so he wouldn't get with Murasaki Bara. That's my head canon, and I'm sticking to it. Oh my gosh. Yes, please. Here for it. So yeah, that's basically my head canon. So it's so crazy that Nishimura not only came to America, but that he does it all by himself. The story does a really good job of portraying how Nishimura, like, gets on the plane by himself. Like, me at 15... I would have been freaking the hell out getting on a plane and going to a country that, not only a city I never knew, but a country, knowing no one, having just a passport and a wallet, and I'm 15 years old, and they're like, you can figure it out, right? That's insane to me. And I'm surprised they even let him on the plane, but what do I know about standards? Maybe he was old enough to get on the plane. Who knows? But I like seeing his thought process as he comes to America, and I'll read you guys a passage from the story here. It says, my family had agreed that I would go directly to the hospital. I sent a quick "I've arrived safely" message to my father before walking out of the airport. In order to get to the hospital, I would have to change buses. Even though a cab would have gone straight to the hospital, it wouldn't have been safe for a student to travel by himself in a taxi. Well, I'm glad he was at least smart enough to go in public transportation and not take an Uber, because that would have been really dangerous. My father had insisted on picking me up, but I had refused, telling him it's fun to navigate foreign streets, so don't come pick me up. To be honest, the real reason I refused him was that I was here because of him. I couldn't make him worry about me. So I do like what that says about Nishimura. Nishimura is very much a take charge person. He doesn't want people to worry about him. He wants to be responsible. I like that about his character. I like that. And also it will connect to something about his character we find out later, which I think is really cool. I stretched a bit to ease the travel kinks out of my body. I like that phrasing. And then checked my phone to make sure I knew which bus I was supposed to get on. I began to look around the station. It was hard, but I had high expectations for myself. After all, I'd managed to come to America by myself, which had greatly boosted my confidence. In addition, even if I can't go there directly, taking the scenic route is my specialty. More importantly, I have an appointment with my father that I have to keep. Gazing out the window of the airport, I saw the sun shining in, dazzling. It seemed like a good time. However, reality is often the opposite of what it seems. I like that every time something really nice happens, the story is like, yeah, so about that really nice thing that was about to happen, yeah, it doesn't really pan out. But I do like the whole idea of the scenic route. I never would have thought of that with Nishimura's character, about taking the scenic route. But it kind of makes sense, especially when we're going to talk about Haizaki later. It kind of makes sense because Akashi does not take the scenic route. Akashi's like, nope, get to the point, win the game, let's go, who cares? We're not going to, diddle around. And Nishimura, him keeping on Haizaki and pursuing him all this time is kind of taking the scenic route. Like, Akashi was like, let's drop him and go. And Nishimura's like, well, wait, no. What if we keep trying? What if we just kind of keep moving along, going with the flow? It matches his character a lot. And that whole idea of taking the scenic route is going to come up throughout this chapter. So I thought it was a really nice framing device early on in this. So, of course, though, the moment that Nishimura gets there, he gets lost outside the airport. He misses his bus. He gets his backpack stolen, which sucks. I'm like, his wallet and passport were in it. I hate that for him. I'm like, that's not good. And then all he's left with is phone, but his phone was dropped and it cracked, and so he can't see the screen, and then he's so concerned and overwhelmed, and you can't help but feel really bad for Nishimura. I do like that he said all the Americans he ran into were compassionate. I'm like, we're not all jerks. I feel like Americans get a bad rap a lot, and part of it is deserved. I'm not going to say it's not, but there are compassionate people, and I like that Nishimura made note of that. I was like, we're not all assholes, just some. And then people help him try to find the way to the hospital. Of course, he gets distracted along the way. So he's like trying to find his way to the hospital and gets distracted by a basketball court, surprising no one. I'm like, we instantly take a turn from it being necessary that we get to the hospital, make an appointment with his dad, to, oh wait, they're playing street ball. Hold on. I want to go play with them. So he gets distracted, of course, like any teenage boy does. And there's a boy with orange hair that starts talking to him in Japanese. And we turn out this is Mike. Mike is the American who has orange hair that speaks Japanese, and he is friends with Himuro. And that's really cool. I like how soft and unsure Nijimura is in this scene. He doesn't really know exactly how to respond, and he's very timid and kind of like testing the waters. It is a total contrast to his character as we've seen it in the series so far, and I really like it. I'm like, it gives Nijimura such depth. I'm like, okay, cool. We get that he's just trying to test the waters and feel it out. He cares about his family, but he's a teenage guy, so he makes mistakes. It's really neat. So Nijimura and Mike, friend of Himuro, they play against these American guys that Nijimura notices is very just super huge, but also by this point, as I'm reading the chapter, I was so floored with everything we were getting with Nijimura. I had to go to the Discord. I had to tell people, I'm like, guys, Nijimura, it was with Himuro. And everybody in the Discord were like, oh, we've been waiting for you to get to this. And I'm like, ah! So at this point, Anime Annie in the Discord says that Nijimura in this chapter is just quote unquote flying his pride flag. And I was like, oh, okay, great. And right after they posted that, I read this passage. First things first, I needed to find a way to ask the Americans to leave. As I tried to think of what to say, my eyes were inadvertently drawn to something. Chest hair! My eyes fell on the man's chest, where his chest hair was poking out from under his t-shirt. I didn't think that in such an emergency situation I should be paying attention to chest hair, but I couldn't help but laugh at myself. I'm sorry. But I know some people will be like, oh, well, that doesn't mean that Nijimura's into guys. And I'm like, look, when I look at a lady, the first thing I don't think of is boobs. I just don't. But yeah, if your first inclination towards a man when you see him is how his chest hair is poking out of his t-shirt and you're staring at his pecs, you may be questioning your sexuality just slightly, or you may be sure of your sexuality, and that is totally fine. But I do think it's adorable how Nijimura is trying to figure out how to say chest hair in English, and he's like, do I say bust hair? The idea of it being bust hair, like of a man's bust and the hair on it, beautiful. Mwah! Love it. Thought that was hilarious. Bust hair. So we come back to Nijimura with Himuro in the present, and Himuro explains that Alex is the coach that he's meeting and that she could offer him a ride in her car to the hospital. Seems like the problem is solved. I'm like, I like it. And we find out that Nijimura has a tendency to get lost, much like Sosuke Yamazaki and others before him in sports anime who are just terrible with directions. Nijimura gets lost often, but his parents encouraged him as a kid to not let him stress it out and walk through it. And I actually really like that lesson. I mean, it's awful to think of a kid that's really young getting lost because of how dangerous it could be, but I like that his parents were like, okay, if you do get lost, don't panic and stress out. Just take your time and work through it and think logically. I'm like, that's actually not a bad thing to do, because if they're not stressing out, they'll probably realize, okay, I need to go ask somebody for help. I need to ask security or something, and think of a much smarter strategy than freaking out and making rash decisions. So he thinks that he'll just call a family member, as Himuro suggests that he does, but his phone's broken and he can't remember his parents' numbers. And that's so funny because at the time reading it, I was like, oh, well, that's dumb. Who doesn't remember their parents' numbers? And I was like, okay, my mom's number is this. My dad's number. And I was like, I can't remember my dad's phone number because we're so used to just clicking our phones and there it is, right? You don't have to, it's not like the 90s where you had to call someone to remember their number. No, it's just right there. You don't have to write it down anymore. So no, that makes sense. And he's 15, so it makes even more sense. So before they can go with Alex, though, you think everything's all easy peasy, problem solved. Before they can get with Alex, we find out that Nijimura beat the guys, the American guys with the chest hair in a basketball game, and they started harassing Mike, Himuro's friend, and then took him away. And it's like, why? Why are these basketball gangs taking people away? What's the deal? But they do. And so Himuro says, we need to go after them. And at that moment, Nijimura realizes that he and Himuro are similar. And the text says what was even scarier was that aside from anger, Himuro's voice had a hint of calmness. Well, it was the same for me. What should we do? I asked, knowing the answer. Himuro turned to look at me, his eyes still cold. One corner of his mouth rose in a smirk, and then he said slowly, well, of course we'll go in and get Mike out unharmed. And then we'll make those guys realize just how stupid they are. Ah, we really do think alike. The corner of my lips also curled up. I'm like, the chemistry with these two is so crazy. Like, in this one chapter alone, the chemistry between Nijimura and Himuro is more than all of the chapters with Kagami and Himuro. Kagami and Himuro, when people talk about shipping, and they're like, oh, well, you always ship male characters together, and what, can't they just be friends? No, we've talked about this in the Discord. I know Anime Annie has gone at length talking about this, and I totally agree. But the thing of it is, it's all about nuances. It's all about the body language. It's about the way things are phrased. It's about the fact that Nijimura blushes when he thinks of Himuro trying to get closer to him. It's emotions, it's actions, it's words. It's all of those things combined. And there's little tiny nuances that make it to where two characters seem more romantically connected than not. Kagami and Himuro, for me, are not romantically connected. Kagami and Himuro just feel like brothers. They feel like best friendos. They feel totally platonic. Like, I have never felt the need to ship Kagami and Himuro. Even with the rings thing, it's like a brotherly bond. They're bros. And I don't ship them romantically, but this whole thing with Himuro and Nijimura, yeah, it's like in your face. You're like, oh, well, okay. And so Nijimura is surprised by how mature Himuro is. And he asks, like, why are you so mature? You seem like you're a lot older than 15. And this whole time, as he's saying this, Himuro is, like, contacting these, like, shady underground characters that play basketball that he knows. And Nijimura's like, how do you know all these people? They're kind of shady and from the underworld. What's going on? And Himuro says that he spent a lot of time with Alex. And that they're all, like, her gambling friends. And apparently, sadly, Alex had a gambling addiction, according to this book. And I was like, what? Alex with a gambling addiction? Holy cow. But she doesn't anymore, and I'm glad. So she had a gambling addiction and knew some underground people, but she doesn't seem to have the addiction in the present, which is great. I'm like, good for Alex, but holy cow. And so then the text says, I was speechless and suddenly struck with a sense of deja vu. Right. It was when I was speaking with Akashi. That guy was only a year younger than me, but he always managed to overshadow even adults. He surprised me in multiple ways, but even so, I couldn't imagine Akashi getting involved in the underworld. No, he's not quite Yakuza enough, right? That guy, it says here, no, I'm too naive. That guy is probably Akashi-sama by now. The first time I learned that he was called Akashi-sama, I almost rolled on the floor laughing. The guy simply said calmly, oh, which made it even more hilarious. I love that. I love that Nijimura's like, oh, one day they'll call him Akashi-sama, and then he does get called that, and Nijimura thinks it's just the funniest thing ever. It's really cute. Again, at one point, I was maybe shipping Akashi and Nijimura, but no. Now, based on these chapters, I feel like Akashi and Nijimura are like a mentor-mentee, kohai, senpai, platonic relationship. No. The sexual chemistry, though, with Himuro and Nijimura, off the charts. All for it. Yes, please. So, although I feel like we're all connected by basketball, everyone's personalities were very different. So I like that. It's like everybody with all these different personalities, like the Generation Miracles, all brought together through basketball, which is nice. So there's this big like conversation they have in a car where Nijimura and Himuro like drive to this warehouse where Mike is kept, and they talk about all these things about. And there is this nice moment where Nijimura's ability to get lost helps him meander around the warehouse to find out where Mike is, which is great. Now, keep in mind, at this point, all of this has been happening, right? Everything that's been going on, the car ride, the talk about Nijimura and Himuro's backstories, all of this, the relation to Akashi with Himuro, which I never thought I'd compare Akashi and Himuro, but here we are. This is all happening the first day Nijimura's in the United States. He's lost his passport, his wallet. He has been abducted by a new basketball friends. They're going to a warehouse to beat up some guys. This is happening before he even gets to the hospital to see his family. What? He still hasn't made it there. So the two find Mike in one of like 3 warehouses outside of the town. What the hell? And suddenly they're surrounded by 16 men. Some have crowbars, some have weapons. I'm like, what is even happening? And so Himuro gets Mike to Nijimura and tells him to get out. He's gonna protect him. And he starts just like roundhouse kicking all of the 16 men to get off them. It's like this very knight in shining armor moment for Himuro saving Nijimura. It's amazing. The men try to corner Nijimura and Mike, But Nijimura shows off in return that he still knows some karate from when he was a kid and went to karate lessons and starts like beating them up. So it's fantastic. Although 16 guys versus 2, Mike can't really do anything. He's pretty useless at this point. Is clearly they're outnumbered. And so as they're about to get beaten up, some of Himuro's basketball friends suddenly pull up. It's like very Outsiders. It's like the greasers all show up. Like all of Himuro's friends from the underground, they all just pull up in their cars. It felt like a chapter of the Outsiders. And I was like, what is this? And so then, yeah, they just show up and scare the other guys away and get Mike. So as they're in the car driving away after they've saved Mike, Nijimura confirms that when he was growing up, he was a delinquent. And it's something he's never told anyone. So I'm sorry, Nijimura's past as a delinquent, I mean, we all kind of guessed it from how he was treating Haizaki. The fact that he was so lenient towards Haizaki, the fact that he was giving him such preferential treatment, it was like, well, he probably has a similar past to Haizaki, so that's why he relates to him. So the fact that he's a delinquent isn't the surprising part about all this, because we kind of guessed that the last couple novels. What's surprising is that Nijimura has never told anyone. Not Akashi, not the coaches, not the other players, not the other third years, no one. He's never revealed his past to anyone before but Himuro, who he's met in one day. I'm like, if that's not soulmates vibes, then I don't know what is. So he says, quote, "I licked my lips and looked down and continued. My father saved me. At first, he decided to wait it out, but eventually, he decided he needed to do something to stop my delinquency. It escalated into a war between us, and that was what woke me up. Shortly after, my father was hospitalized. At first, we thought it was just a cold. We didn't imagine it could be something incurable. My father joked it was maybe a concussion caused by my fist. He was hospitalized during my second year of junior high. I blamed myself for that. Even though my dad had tried to cover it up as a joke, I couldn't help but think that my delinquent past had contributed to his unnecessary stress. I decided to take responsibility. I told my family if we couldn't pay for the medical expenses, I would quit basketball and find work. At the time, my dad told me, a father is allowed to give things to his son, but he is not allowed to take anything away. Dad refused to let me sacrifice myself for him. He made sure I continued basketball so I could graduate with my teammates I had played with all of those years." So it's so beautiful, the idea that Nijimura, he realized he was a delinquent, was to the point where he was fighting with his own dad. And then when his dad gets sick, it's like a wake-up call, and he's like, oh. And the fact that Nijimura offered to quit basketball to pay for medical bills and stuff, and his dad's like, no, I want you to finish out your years at Teiko so that you can be with your friends. And I love that line where he says, that line that he tells him that a father is allowed to give things but not allowed to take anything away. And so it makes him stepping down as captain makes so much more sense. It's not that he wanted to. It's not he was overwhelmed. It was just literally the fact that his dad, he felt so much guilt for leaving his dad behind and not helping out like he should have, that he's like, I have to do this. It gives so much more weight to it. And it's really powerful, right? And it also makes it more apparent that Nijimura with Haizaki, I had been shipping Nijimura with Haizaki, and now I'm like, no. That was all like a father figure towards his son relationship. Like Nijimura was kind of acting like his own father towards Haizaki, who was viewing as himself as a delinquent and trying to get him on the right path. And so I was like, no, I should have been rooting for Nijimura and Himuro this whole time. But yeah, it's crazy, right? And obviously we've talked about this in the comments. At the time when I was watching the anime, I was like, well, why'd Akashi let him down and give up on Haizaki? That's not fair. And then when you read the manga and you realize just how bad Haizaki was, then you're like, yeah, I kind of get why Akashi did it. But I still respected Nijimura a lot for trying to get Haizaki on the straight and narrow. Tried it. And so then, I turned around. Himuro extended his hand towards me. A wish that your father will recover from his illness. Oh, I quietly grasped his hand. Feeling a little awkward, I joked, I can't see these hands as being able to punch people. Don't pay it any mind. These hands were made for basketball. Though, we haven't had our one-on-one match yet. When you manage to settle down, feel free to contact me. I'll always be on that court. Got it. It's a promise. As we let go of each other's hand, the phone rang. It was Hamuro's teacher, Alex. At the time, we didn't know, but we still had another little detour to take to Hamuro's teacher, Alex. So Nishimura is meeting Alex. That's so cool. But I just love that they shake hands like we're going to play again, right? It's a promise. I love it. I was just like, right off the bat, this chapter, I was like, it fueled my Nishimura and Hamuro ship. I need more. I want more. And it's so sad because we know that Nishimura, he may still be in America and Hamuro's gone to Japan. But I really hope Volume 6 or the Last Game manga, something gives us some Nishimura content. Like, something gives us a nod to that. Now I'm excited for the Last Game manga because if we see Kagami go to Japan or go to America and see Alex and Nishimura's there, I will lose my shit. I'll be like, oh my god. But yeah! Best chapter ever! So unexpected. So unexpected. So yeah, just so you know, this entire volume is all about ships. All about ships. This volume's my favorite so far. Volume 5 is my favorite. I keep saying each volume gets better. Volume 5 is my favorite because it's just nothing but shipping, right? With the exception of the 2 chapters that we don't get descriptions for. Chapter 2 did not have a translation, but the Wikipedia description was, the chapter focuses on Haizaki, imagine that, hitting on girls and getting into fights. It's set before the Winter Cup preliminaries. He's very bitter about the Generation of Miracles. He gets chatted up by a girl and goes along, but this turns out to be a trap and he's attacked by preliminary opponents, which is kind of crazy that Haizaki is like lured into a trap to get beaten up, but with his reputation, you kind of see that being a possibility. But Haizaki apparently is able to steal his opponent's metal baseball bat and uses it to beat them up instead. Like, it just went full-on Ace of the Diamond, hardcore dark beating up, like, within a second. Captain Hideki Ishida is unable to control Haizaki at all, and is sad. So, I'm kind of glad I didn't read that chapter right after this one, because I was on such a, like, rush after chapter 1, that I think immediately turned to Haizaki, like, beating up people with a metal baseball bat, and his own captain being like, I don't know what to do. It seems like it would be a downer. Seems like it would be a downer after that really intense shipping moment, so I'm sure if you guys have read the chapter before and want to comment down below about it, that'd be amazing. But I was like, fine, I missed that. Not mad. Not mad at all. So then chapter 3 is Summer Vacation, called Their Summer Vacation. And it's translated by, there's a Japanese there, the third G of Replace 5 translations. This chapter is all about the summer vacation between Ogiwara and Kuroko when they were still in elementary school, which is so cute. I was like, oh, we get elementary school, Ogiwara and Kuroko. Again, I don't ship Ogiwara and Kuroko. I feel them as platonic besties, and this chapter kind of fuels that because they're in grade school, so there's really nothing romantic. They're just literal babies. But it's super cute. Their summer vacation kicks off around July 23rd, and Kuroko is determined to finish up on his homework, but Ogiwara isn't as studious. And Kuroko says that after he's done, he should make Ogiwara teach him basketball, which he does agree to. So I like the idea that we get Kuroko being studious as a little kid, and Ogiwara is not, which I like, which kind of goes to him being a parallel to Almine and Kagami. Surprising no one. But then we cut to August 3rd, where Kuroko and Ogiwara, they go swimming after practice. And Kuroko seems a little bit shy with the crowds in the pool, but Ogiwara takes it as something fun and swims through them. Kuroko says that he's scared of crowds, but because of Ogiwara's initiative, he decides to reverse his perspective and follow Ogiwara's lead. And it's a really nice preview to him using observation skills, which is going to become something Kuroko does for misdirection. So I liked it because the one thing that kind of irked me with the last volume that I read of the manga was Akashi saying that it was basically his doing that caused Kuroko to realize his potential. And this chapter kind of suggests that Kuroko was maybe thinking about something similar from the start. Akashi just kind of like pushed it into a tangible perspective. So I like that. And then it says, in the future, Kuroko's ability to weave through crowds might or might not be able to be attributed to playing in the pool with Ogiwara. So I like that. I like the idea of there being that connection between them, right? So we jump to August 16th. The two are hanging out, playing basketball, chatting. It's described they're a great balance for one another, which is super cute. And I love that Ogiwara kind of sticks to his guns. He's not really a studious kid. He'd rather just play basketball and swim. And the text says, I know, but I've got no motivation. Like the research project. I can't think of anything for it. Like a salaryman drowning his own cares in his drink, Ogiwara downed the tea in his bottle in one gulp. That's so cute. Like a little 10-year-old that's just like, I just don't know what to do. And sips, drinks his tea like a salaryman. That's so cute. I love the visual of that. And so Kuroko suggests that they do a project related to the rice balls they're eating. And I instantly thought of when I was in 6th grade, my science fair project was very much like which liquid makes the plants grow fastest. Is it water? Is it tea? Is it coffee? Or is it milk? It is not coffee or milk. I think the tea made it grow the fastest, I think. And it was unsweetened, uncaffeinated tea that made it do it. But yeah, so it kind of felt like that. They decide to use a project related to rice balls, which they're eating, and Ogiwara agrees to it. And what's really cute is there's this nice little callback. It's like the calling card. They end the project with Ogiwara having the rice stuck to his face, and that's what we'll see later on in the manga and anime. So I like that continuity. I thought that was really, really cute. So we cut finally to the summer of the date of August 25th, where summer is about to end, and the two are zealously playing basketball to try to take advantage of the time that they have left. And so then there's this really cool part. As they finish up practice, they're talking to each other about summer ending, and they look down at the basketball in their hands as they're walking home, and they see that it's completely smooth, like they've worn out the tread on the basketball. And they're like, oh, I wish we could buy a new one to play a few more days before we go back to school. And they look in this shop window, but the basketball is more expensive than anything either of them have. And at the same time they're talking about this man, he's not described. There's no description for him, by the way. No description, nothing to suggest who he could be. Only that he's leaving the store and the cashier says, oh, well, bring that daughter you're always talking about next time with you. Which makes me think that it's Kagetora and that they were talking about Riko. So I was like, oh, is it Kagetora that saw Kuroko and Ogiwara and they didn't even realize it? And so he notices the two kids standing there, and when they tell him he can't afford the basketball that they want, he had a basketball, which is not really explained. So we don't know what the basketball Kagetora had was for, but he ends up giving it to Kuroko and Ogiwara, saying, well, you guys have it. Just, don't tell my wife. My theory was, I don't think it was a ball for Riko, because if it was a basketball for Riko, I don't think Kagetora would have given it away because he loves his daughter that much. But he's also a physical trainer, so it could have been the basketball was used for exercise or something, and he didn't want his wife to know he was just buying supplies and then giving them away. So that's my theory. The basketball was for his training facility. He gave it to the kids. That's my theory. And so the two end up taking the new ball to go play together. But of course, because this is Kuroko's basketball and that these light novels have always had a weird twist to them, this is how the chapter ends. The two ran off, racing each other. As if regretting the ending of summer, the cicadas started singing. But the two running side by side, there were no thoughts of regrets. Even if summer ends, they will surely still play basketball together. And someday, they would stand together on that spacious court. The cicadas all sang louder. The summer that song was heard in conjunction with the sounds of weeping was a future not far from now. What? Why? Why did you end that story with this horrible, well, it seemed like everything was going to go right until it didn't. I was like, what? How? Story, what? I just could not believe it. I was floored. Absolutely floored. So chapter 4 is A Certain Sixth Man's Break. God, this book is so good. I love every single chapter. The first chapter is amazing. This chapter is good. Chapter 4 is called A Certain Sixth Man's Break, and I thought it was going to be about Kuroko. Nope, we're back at Rakuzan. We're going to do my Mayuzumi focus. Oh my god, I love it. So the chapter starts about from Mayuzumi's perspective. I am loving all the first-person point of views that this novel is giving us. It's amazing. But this one had some of the best writing. I loved it. So I want to read you some passages from this about Mayuzumi. The rooftop of Rakuzan High School's north building. That's my reserved seat during lunch break. The other buildings obviously have rooftops too, but I wouldn't think of going anywhere but here. It's been a little over 2 years since I entered Rakuzan High School. The results of the comparative investigation of each building's rooftop indicated that the North School building's roof has the least amount of wind and is the quietest, so it's the most suitable for reading. Previously, I've been asked by my classmate Miyazumi, why are you so particular about the rooftop? If it's just for reading, the courtyard, cafeteria, or even the library would be fine, but the reason my legs take me to the rooftop is because of outside influence after all. The thing that influenced me is this book that I'm holding on now, a light novel. In the light novel that I like to read, the rooftop appears as a very important spot. I love it! The characters of the story would find unknown objects, meet the mysterious transfer student, and reveal secrets, all on the roof. I think it's because this happens so many times, my legs naturally take me to the roof. Just because I do that doesn't mean that I want to find unknown objects or meet a mysterious transfer student. At the end of the day, it's all fiction. For me, it's good if I can just enjoy a story that I like on a quiet rooftop. That's what I had thought. So yeah, Miyazumi, what's so fascinating about this is Miyazumi is a very introverted character. He just wants to sit on his rooftop. He wants to read his light novel. And I'm sure that maybe there's some stigma against him, that he's afraid people are going to make fun of him for reading light novels. And he's like, I don't want to be made fun of, so I'm going to sit on their roof. Nobody's going to bother me, right? It's the most ideal, tranquil place. So, but not today. Because Hayama shows up and finds Miyazumi on the rooftop first. And Miyazumi seems annoyed that Hayama doesn't, quote-unquote, respect his senpai, which felt very Miyuki from Ace of the Diamond, but I guess Hayama just doesn't care if you're his senpai or not. He treats you exactly the same way. And it seems on brand for Hayama to be that way. He's looking for Nabuya, and Hayama asks what Miyazumi is reading, but he doesn't seem very interested in it and just tries to make small talk instead. Miyazumi thinks that since he's the new sixth man on Rakuzan, that Hayama and the others are all just viewing him as a tool. Which is a really sad way to think about it, that Miyazumi just feels used, so he doesn't feel like he really wants to get close to them. So after Hayama leaves, Mabuchi promptly shows up. And Miyazumi gets annoyed at this point because he's like, I have all these visitors today and I don't like it. So now, Mabuchi is such a priss. He is not impressed with the rooftop. Again, this text. It says, well, this scenery isn't exactly great, and it's not an amazing rooftop. Oh, no, on top of that, isn't the sunlight strong here? I'll burn. So as Mabuchi was yapping away and complaining, I noticed a book nestled under his arm, and my brows knitted together as well. Could it be that you came here to read? That's right. I heard that you came here to read every day, so I thought it'd be a nice place, but I'm disappointed. That's good, or else the beauty of this place, the emptiness, would get spoiled. So I like that. I like that Miyazumi likes this for the emptiness there, the quiet, right? What kind of book do you exactly read? Though I wanted him to hurry up and leave, curiosity came over me when I asked, and Mabuchi chuckled. Well, poetry. I'm really into it now. It was an unexpected answer. For a second-year high school boy to like poetry is quite sentimental. Whose poetry do you read, for example? Oh, right now I'm reading Heine. He's a love poet. As he said that, Mabuchi took out his book and kissed the cover. Is he for real? So then, he says, it's my dream to someday recite poetry for a wonderful person I've met. Mabuchi was smiling away, but in my life of a year and half a year longer than his, I never met or heard of a quote-unquote girl who delights in a poetry recital. Well, Miyazumi, that's because Mabuchi's not reading this for a girl. He probably wants to read it to Akashi. I was like, ah! Yeah, no, it's pretty clear, the writing's on the wall. Mabuchi is reading poetry to his loved one, and it ain't no girl. I was like, yes, please. Just as I was thinking that he was finally leaving, he looked over his shoulder. I love this part. I'm sorry. I have many friends who are not heterosexual, and I have friends that are heterosexual. I have never seen a heterosexual man do this, ever. Where it's like, Mabuchi, and just as I was thinking he was finally leaving, he looked over his shoulder with his hand on the door. He stared at me with cold, piercing eyes. It's fine to read, but it's better to work on your strength a bit. Your stamina is overwhelmingly not enough. It'll drag us down during a match. What a bitch thing to say! Like, Mabuchi was just like, oh, by the way, you're not practicing enough. Get better. Like, just the sass, the shade, the diva-ness. I was like, no. One of my friends from college did that exact same move. I was like, oh my God. It looked like he was talking about my reading leisurely during lunch break. Leave me alone. I love Mayuzumi's like, leave me alone. Even like this, I've been perfectly coping with Akashi's special training menu. Having said that, I didn't plan on using it as my comeback. When I didn't say anything, whether Mabuchi took it as consent or thought it was wasted effort, he continued on his own. After school today, practice with me a bit. I want to get used to misdirection more. I'm counting on you. So Mabuchi kind of just follows it up with, he's like, you're not practicing hard enough, but like, practice with me and I'll help you. So it's nice. I love Mabuchi's character, and his cameo in this was really good. After Mabuchi leaves, it turns out that this entire time, Nobuya was hiding on the roof with Mayuzumi. He was just avoiding Hayama, who showed up first. Mayuzumi notes that if he didn't rat Nobuya out because he didn't want the two of them getting loud on the rooftop and then never leaving. And Nobuya notes that Akashi told them all to meet Mayuzumi and come meet him up there, which Mayuzumi's like, wait, what? And so about that time, Nobuya leaves and Akashi, of course, shows up. He has to be the last to enter the room. And he reveals that he told the uncrowned kings to visit Mayuzumi so he could practice his observation skills and increase the power of his misdirection without Mayuzumi realizing it. But he ended up noticing it anyway. It's interesting because this whole time, it's like Mayuzumi was like, oh, he got me, gal. And I was thinking about how Kuroko, for all his quietness, is surprisingly social and extroverted. Like, Kuroko loves hanging around people. He's always around people. He's never off by himself. He likes hanging around people all the time. He's pretty extroverted. Mayuzumi is polar opposite. Mayuzumi is introverted to the max, wants nothing to do with any of them. He's like, nope, bye. And that's it, right? But then Akashi says, for you, I mean to have you be an equal to any light. So I thought it'd be better for you to have contact with them, but it looks like it wasn't necessary. And Mayuzumi says, oh, for you means different from the old model. From the beginning, Tetsuya was built a deeply trusting relationship with his partner, the light, aka Amine. Therefore, he was able to dedicate solely to making him shine as the shadow. Kuroko Tetsuya, the Phantom Sixth Man. When he said that name, the sharpness of his eyes grew a bit more pointed. Maybe he doesn't like how the power that he discovered is being used against him. Or is he being cautious to that difference? Without noticing, I was clenching my book tightly. Why am I getting worked up? I love it. I love that that's how it's phrased with Kuroko. Now, what's really cool about the end of this chapter is it's noted that Almine is referred to as the Lonely King, which is a nice tie-in to Akashi. We don't really get a lot of Almine and Akashi tie-ins in this. It's a nice tie-in. Mayuzumi notes that he's merely a shogi piece to Akashi, and he also notes that Akashi is like an alien who has shown him this new world, and that it's normal in stories to meet aliens on rooftops. I was like, oh, that's cool. He also wonders, quote, from here on out, is a happy ending waiting for me, or am I pursuing a cruel fate? In the end, the only one that knows is the Lonely King. I was like, oh my God. And that whole tie-in to Almine being like, well, is me being the sixth man going to be a good thing or a bad thing? I guess only Almine really knows. And I'm like, oh my God, the shade. I was like, this chapter is really well done. I liked it. I liked the chapter being about Mayuzumi just wanting peace to read his light novel, and then it ends with Akashi just tricking him, and then him questioning, like, am I going to be better than Kuroko? What does it even look like? What's the point of it? So, it was a really good chapter. Again, I like the confirmation that Mabuchi's trying to read poetry to his man. Love it! So, chapter 5 is another chapter that did not have a translation. That was really sad. But the description was saying, this is a story about Seirin's second years recruiting the new first years. Izuki, it's about his puns. Hyuga is like Sengoku Warlord trivia. Hyuga, Riko, and Teppei's moments are all featured to them being an OT3. And essentially, it's a better look at the beginning of the manga. Which does sound fun, but I was like, that's fine. I feel like we've seen enough audio dramas. We've seen enough stuff from like the early stuff with Seirin. I'm okay skipping a chapter where it's just kind of more of what we've already seen. So that's fine. But then chapter 6, The Bad Boy of Deceit. This chapter is about Hanamiya, which I was like, man, we get like all the delinquents, all the bad boys in like one light novel. Who knew? But it's about Hanamiya, and I'm going to be reading a lot straight from the text on this one because it's just so well written that I'm like, huh. So it's basically, what makes this even more hilarious was at the time that I was reading this final chapter, I was watching episodes of the English dub of Kuroko's Basketball, and it was the game against Kurosaki. So this whole time I'm reading this story about Hanamiya, I'm also watching the Hanamiya game versus Seirin in the English dub. So just the timing of it was perfect, right? So the story starts out, the final chapter starts out saying, these are the rumors surrounding Hanamiya Makoto. Good at basketball. Calm with a wide field of view. He has wits fitted for a point guard. Intelligent. He had the top score for his year level in the standardized test from the beginning of the year. Well-mannered and kind. Always humble. He has the wholehearted trust of his friends and those in years above him. Of those who knew Hanamiya, 10 out of 10 would say this: Hanamiya's a good guy. Even if you were to ask people in the same basketball club, 10 out of 10 would know there was no one who would tilt his head in doubt. But only one. Imayoshi Shoichi. Hanamiya's senpai from 1 year above him. There was a smile hovering around this basketball club's second year's mouth as he looks on in doubt. Is Hanamiya really such a good guy? I was like, at first I was like, wait, what? So apparently everybody that knows Hanamiya off the court thinks he's delightful. They think he's just a nice guy. And I was like, huh? Everybody except Imayoshi. So we go back into the past where Imayoshi and Hanamiya are on the same team together. Imayoshi's just a year later. And they're talking about how Hanamiya is standing out as an uncrowned king. And they're just talking about like the nickname being thrown around for them. And there's this tension between Imayoshi and the other teammates when they talk about Hanamiya. Apparently Imayoshi's really bitter about losing their last game, their final year. And apparently the team that Hanamiya and Imayoshi were on had a new coach. And he was restructuring the team. But part of the restructuring was not done right. For example, the coach wanted his son to play as a regular, which is something I think a lot of athletes can relate to when they're on a team and the coach's kid gets to play and you're like, but he's not that good. And it's like, So there is that. He gets to play as a regular, and Imayoshi and the others are really upset about it. But then, during one of the games, here's what the text says. The one on top apparently there was like an accident that happened. The one on top rose totteringly to his feet and called out the one who had gotten crushed under him as if taken aback. Oh, senpai, please get a hold of yourself. The voice belonged to Hanamiya. There was no reply from the fallen one. And instead, the coach yelled out his son's name as he thrust away Hanamiya. I love the idea of the coach running onto the court and he just like tosses Hanamiya aside. I'm like, yes, please. Crouching behind his son on the ground. They could tell who had been injured. Call the ambulance! Call the school nurse! The club's advisor's voice quickly flew out, and Imayoshi and all sprang from the gym in a rush. It was an unlucky accident. Hanamiya had been setting up a shot under the goal, only to lose his balance. The coach's son had been under there and gotten dragged to his feet. This was a common occurrence, but unluckily, the following Hanamiya's elbow slammed into the son's face, causing a concussion and for him to lose consciousness. He regained consciousness on the route to the hospital, but decided he would be prudent for him to take a rest from the club for a while. Hanamiya was very depressed over injuring his senpai, and at that point I was like, was he really? Because we know Hanamiya sets things up like on purpose, right? But that's what the text said, so you kind of go along with it. It says the infuriated coach raged for Hanamiya's resignation from the team, and even Hanamiya himself said he would take responsibility, but all the members unanimously opposed. And thanks to even the club advisor, who normally held his tongue, speaking up for Hanamiya's behalf, the coach reluctantly withdrew the resignation. It was a week after the accident. After detailed examination, it was found there were no irregularities in the injured second one's brain, but the torn Achilles heel was diagnosed to need 3 months to heal completely. I was like, holy shit, like just all this. I'm like, what? And so Hanamiya got off the hook. And so everyone, what's insane is that after this happens, everyone's worried about Hanamiya. Like everyone in the school is like, oh my God, are you okay? It wasn't your fault. Oh, it's fine. It was an accident. Like all kiss his butt. And so everyone's worried about Hanamiya. And they tell him, and so they told him to go to practice at the gym. And then we see Hanamiya standing alone in the deserted gym, bouncing the ball twice, 3 times. He catched it with both hands and raised his face. Everything is just as planned. It's a damn Light Yagami Death Note moment, all according to Cake. And then says, even though he managed to stop from bursting into laughter, his mouth couldn't help but relax. And that's when someone says, that's a good face on you. Hanamiya's shoulder jumped at the sudden statement and turned in the direction of the voice. While he was unaware, Imayoshi had been standing there in his uniform. Behind his glasses, his narrow eyes smiled cheerfully, even though it had been nice if you always looked like that. What do you mean? Hanamiya smiled at Imayoshi, looking a little bothered. I always look like this. Oh, no, the face from before. The unadulterated one you just showed. Imayoshi slowly moved closer. You had a really evil look. I'm like, Imiyoshi's getting off on it. I'm like, oh my God. He's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm afraid I don't understand what you're trying to say. Let's stop probing for intentions. It's tiring. From a distance of 2 steps, the two stood opposite each other, keeping a smile on their faces. The first one to throw in the towel was Imayoshi, though. Well, it's fine. I didn't think you would show your true nature to me immediately anyway. As if in defeat, Imayoshi sighed and said quietly, it was a very good trick, I thought. Completely deceiving them thanks to that good boy mask. No one thinks that you deliberately injured him. Rather, you got them sympathizing with you. That's too well prepared, really. Hanamiya gave a chuckle, his eyes crinkled as if he was enjoying himself. That's so mean, senpai. You make me sound inhuman. Are you denying it? Of course. It's not like there's any proof I planned all that. It's not like I need proof. I wasn't thinking of telling your trick to anyone. Well, in that case, did you just want to play detective? And then Imayoshi says, well, of course not. I came here to give you some advice. Advice, Hanamiya repeats, only to have Imayoshi laugh at him as he confirms it. That's right. In an instant, Hanamiya felt a chill run down his spine. Before he realized for what it was, Imayoshi opened his mouth. This time, no one realized except for me, so it's fine. But it's useless if you get caught. No more mischief. Speaking quietly, Imayoshi pushed his glasses up. The narrowed eyes behind the glasses weren't smiling. Hanamiya could feel his mouth suddenly running dry. I love it. I love Imayoshi. Calls him out as bullshit. And Imiyoshi's like, look, I'm going to tell you if it's right or wrong, but don't get caught. And I caught you, so. Oh my God. So Imayoshi asks if he's ever going to quit the charade, and Hanamiya shoos him away. When did you start thinking I was suspicious? He'd heard that this was a strong school before he got in, only to find out the club had turned into no better than garbage. Sick of it, Hanamiya had given up on the status quo and made plans to change the team into something he could enjoy, even though he intended to lay the groundwork scrupulously. It grates that he was found out so quickly. He needs to know where it came apart. That's right, Imayoshi said as Hanamiya glared petulantly at him, leaving a hand against his jaw as he relocated. I didn't notice at first, but the fact that there was nothing but good talk, I thought that was weird. I might as well have noticed because it went against my beliefs. Oh, what do you mean your beliefs? He has some cute points, after all. Imayoshi thought in the face of Hanamiya's honest question, oh my God, quit calling his points cute! And that's when Imayoshi says, there's no such thing as a good person. I love that. That is a belief, right? That is like, and it kind of makes sense why Imayoshi would be all about Almine, because Almine was kind of the bad boy at that point. And Imiyoshi's like, fine, you're being genuine. You're being your authentic self. Okay. And we know that Almine was not quite his authentic self, but Imayoshi just took him as he was. It's like aligns with his characters. But the idea that there's no such thing as a good person. I'm telling you, Imayoshi and Hanamiya, they are a ship. A few weeks pass. There was a continuing string of incidents within the basketball club. First, the coach suddenly resigned. Citing personal reasons, the coach moved away as if he was running away from something. Of course, his son went with him. The others in a panic were the other regulars. Knowing that doing as they pleased left them with no place in the club, one by one they left. Before long, a specialist coach with basketball experience was called in from somewhere and assumed the post. The coach picked up new regulars based on their skills, uncaring what level they were, and, without waiting for the third years to retire, chose the second-year Imayoshi to be captain. The storm of happenings tossed about the club members left them bewildered. But as the new captain, Imayoshi gave out precise instructions, always with a disdainful smile. Everyone got used to the storm, and the nascent basketball club was right on track within days. As the preliminaries for inter-school tournament drew closer, Hanamiya stared at the new uniform he'd received from the manager and thought, is this what you had thought up? It's obvious that Imayoshi had a part in the series of events. In fact, he probably came up with it. Especially since the new coach is only one in title, the coach in substance is Imayoshi. In conclusion, he'd always been tired of that annoying arbitrary system. So I love that. I love that Hanamiya like lifts his head and looks over at Imayoshi like, I wanted to make the team what I wanted to and control it. You wanted to make the team what you wanted to, and we were just fighting to see who could do it first. And Imayoshi won. I was like, oh my God, I love it, right? In conclusion, he'd always been tired of that annoying arbitrary system. The schemer in question was looking cheerfully at the new regulars, rejoicing over their uniforms. Those eyes are not watching over them, but it's like someone cheerfully observing monkeys at a zoo. As if someone had noticed the gaze, Imayoshi approached Hanamiya. What is it? Any complaints over the new uniform? Whatever, Hanamiya glowered at him sternly. It does look like things will get entertaining around here, but at the same time, it's not all that entertaining being shown Imayoshi's unfathomable depths. Pointless. Everyone righted their eyes at the sight of Hanamiya cursing brazenly without a care, only Imayoshi looking on smugly. From the open door, the early summer wind enters and gently brushes at those present. Hanamiya Makoto, 12 years old at this, was subsequently nicknamed the Uncrowned King Bad Boy. His conspicuous early debut was thus arranged. So, Imayoshi like orchestrated part of this, but they were 12 and 13 years old in these chapters. What? That floored me when it was revealed. Like, the timeline makes sense, but I was like, what is happening? But yeah, so Imayoshi and Hanamiya have been planning their conquering of their teams for ages. It's just absolutely insane. And so there was a little extra chapter at the end. It was called A Clockwork Apple and Honey and Little Sister. And it's just like a little magical girl shoujo group. It's really short, but the little shoujo group, at first I was like, what the hell is this? Was this added on? Was this even Kuroko's basketball? It is. It's just basically the story that Mayuzumi reads right before he meets Akashi. We get to see what that story was about that he was reading in the light novel. Super cute, but I loved this volume. This volume was amazing. The Mayuzumi story was so much fun to read. The Imayoshi and Hanamiya like weird ass coupling was so bizarre. The whole thing with Nijimura and Hamuro, I was like, are you freaking kidding me? And then yeah, chapter 3 where it's like the summer vacation between Ogawara and Kuroko. I was floored. I was like, oh my God, this novel's amazing. I had so much fun with it. I highly encourage you, if you are a shipper and you are just like, what's some crack ships we can really get aboard? All aboard this train. Nijimura and Hamuro, I need fan fiction now. I need it. I need it. Because it's so good. I was like, oh ho ho ho. Seeing the side of Nijimura was so fascinating. And it makes me really excited to read volumes 25 and 26, which if you're watching this video, it's already on the channel. But I'm really excited to do that next. But yeah, we have one more light novel. We have a couple more sets of volumes of the manga. I know Anime Annie is working on the character Bible, and Truck has the other 2 audio dramas. If I don't get to them until this fall, along with the shipping video, it's okay. But we'll get to them this fall, and we'll have more Kuroko's content. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. But I'm just so floored, y'all. I'm so amazed, and I love it. So yeah, I'm so excited. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts down below, but if you get a chance to read light novel number 5, go do it. It's on Patreon in the Discord. It's saved. Go check it out. It's online. So good. But I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with the final light novel of Kuroko's basketball.